chatty, informal, multi-page letters with a lot of personalization, meaning, you know, dear Mr. Smith, dear John, we appreciate your last contribution of $25. We're moving backwards. The old technology, which we abandoned because of cost, we're moving back to. A campaign that is pumping, whether it's a commercial campaign or whether it's a political campaign, a campaign in my view that is pumping their dollars into self-mailing pieces, is throwing a lot of money away. This is a medium that really grew in California, and today a closed-faced envelope communication in the mail is either a bill, or it's a letter from a friend, or you're getting sued by somebody, in my case. So there's no question that technology is moving backwards, and in some ways that's a good thing, because it's going to bring greater personalization into the marketplace, and I think it's going to, and this could be reflected in polling, it's going to demonstrate a new effectiveness that you haven't seen in the past. Now, it's a bigger budget item for your corporate campaign or your public relations campaign or your political campaign, but I also think it's worth it in terms of openability and communication of message. So I have moved away from the old style. I also think that the television, the power of television has been in many ways destroyed, at least severely damaged, by cable. For the same reason I said in the beginning, you had 11 choices. You lived here, you had WNEW on 5 and WPIX on 11 when I was growing up, CBS, ABC on 7, CBS on 2, NBC on 4. That's it, folks, 7 o'clock. You were watching one of those, and 13, pardon me, the educational station. Those are the only choices you had at 7 o'clock. So you had a 1 in 7 chance of somebody seeing your ad. It's pretty good, 1 in 7 in a market this size. Now at 7 o'clock at night, what are the choices? 1 in 190? I mean, there's so many cable stations on top of the networks that the tonnage, the repetition that it takes to get an idea through on television has quadrupled. When I ran Tom Kaine's campaign for governor of New Jersey in 1981, under a situation in which the state has public finance, and each candidate in those days was capped at $1.8 million, which today would barely buy you half a week of television in this market. That's a slight exaggeration, but not much. One of the principal reasons that I think my candidate won, other than the fact that he was a moderate Republican who was well suited to New Jersey, was the fact that we hoarded our money till the end, and I was able to get a big 700 gross rating points for the final week. And in 1981, that walked the dog. That was a huge amount of TV. Today, folks, that's a drop in the bucket. That wouldn't even get your campaign started, because the cost has become so astronomical, and the need for repetition has become so much greater that running for public office or running a campaign for a corporate entity or a business, it becomes expensive beyond belief, which leads you back to the internet. The most attractive thing about the net is the lack of cost. Once you've built your fundamental websites and you've got your message out there, it is relatively inexpensive to drive people to that site, to that place, to that information. Whereas television has really taken a hit. Now, that is not to say that TV is not still the most effective medium. It is. That's not to say that television combined with cable, although they're entirely different, is not the most effective medium for communication. It still is. But cable is more like radio than television. Because of the diffuse nature of cable, there's no such thing as being effective with a small amount of cable. So when a client says to me, selling a corporate program, product, or a candidate, well, we're going to do 2 weeks of cable at the end, don't bother. Cable's a bleed-through medium. It's like radio. It takes a long time and a lot of repetition of the exact same message to be effective. So if your budget for your effort includes 6 weeks of cable, 2 months of cable, and you have the discipline not to change your message but to stick to one, I have a rule of thumb. My supporters come and say, everyone's sick of this TV spot, we've got to get it off. I know we're getting somewhere. It takes that kind of repetition. If you have that kind of discipline, cable is a great communicative tool. Television, network television is fast. Cable and radio are effective but slow. 2 weeks of radio, don't bother. A month of radio, 3 weeks of radio, absolutely. And then of course there's the mesh. I see this all the time. A campaign, whether it's corporate or political, is well funded. Therefore they're using mail, they're using phones, they're using radio, they're using cable, they're using television. And they're saying something different on all of them. This is like when you were a kid and you poured vinegar on baking soda. Remember that result? When all those mediums are in sync, when they are all driving the same message, so that the consumer is turning on the TV, seeing your spot, watching New York One, seeing your spot, going to the mailbox, reading your mail, picking up the phone, listening to your call, live or tape. When they're going to their internet and it's being reinforced, that's how you communicate today, on every front. On every front. I think one-dimensional communication is relatively ineffective. But time and time again, I see campaigns and efforts with good funding running different messages on different mediums at the same time. And I see a number of political consultants who do this, none in the room, thank goodness, and I just scratch my head because it's very fundamental. So the world does work in a different way. I had a corporate client in a relatively large state who was trying to make an important public policy point, and they did the traditional thing. They put together a couple notebooks that bolstered their case. It was on a relatively controversial matter, and we took them around and they made the rounds to the Attorney General and the state's attorney and the U.S. attorney and all the other decision makers, and they all read the material and they all said, this is very interesting, we'll look into it, meaning they were going to do nothing. So then we quantified the email addresses of the 2,000 people in the state who cared about this. And we sent the information to them every day for months. Now, suddenly, the Attorney General decides he needs to look into this. It was very inexpensive. There was a lot of work in list compilation. But it is the way the new world works. You can communicate around the New York Times if you have to. You can communicate around decision makers if you have to. Any lobby campaign that does not have an internet component today is going to fail. It's going to fail. So I'm still learning how to use the technology. And theories I've stated are my own based on experience. But I think some of those who've been in the political arena in this room, and I salute you for having the guts to get in the arena, know what I'm talking about. It's a shifting question, and the Obama campaign is really utilizing the new technology in a way that the Republicans seem to be completely unable to do. So the Republicans are now in a catch-up mode, and these voter registration drives that are being conducted largely in the South, but also in other key states, are going to make structural changes in the body politic for a long time to come, regardless of whether Obama wins, regardless of whether he gets reelected, regardless of whether the Republican Party bounces back in the midterm elections. My party, which has, without any question, lost its way in terms of what it stands for and why they're in the arena, is going to sustain some real structural damage from this election because of our lack of funds and our misunderstanding of the technology. We're not using the new technology. And when John McCain goes to a country club in Kennebunkport, Maine to ride around on the golf court with George H.W. Bush while Barack Obama is talking to 200,000 people in Germany, I have to scratch my head, folks. I don't know whose call that one was, but it has to be one of the stupidest things I've ever